Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Broadcasting from Pittsburgh today, my name is John Keir, and with me as always is my co-host from Long Island, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
Austin, unfortunately, is a little under the weather, so we're gonna try to get this done without him talking too much, because obviously we all know what it's like talking with a sore throat. It's not very fun. But we're gonna be recapping the Steelers' 24-20 win over the Cincinnati Bengals, eliminating them from the playoffs, putting the Steelers one step closer to a division title, and sweeping the Bengals in the process. And looking back at this game, the number one star clearly had to be Chris Boswell. He came up large all game long on 6 kicks, tying a team record with Gary Anderson and Jeff Reed. All 5 of his 6 field goals came from 40 yards or more. One of them was from 30. He hit his extra point and actually made a touchdown-saving tackle on a kick return. Austin, how great was Chris Boswell on Sunday?
Chris Boswell did amazing. He did everything we could have asked him to. He didn't really hit very long ones. He hit almost 50-yard ones 3 times. But every time his name was called, he did his job. And also, he saved, like you said, he saved that kick return touchdown, but barely. He got his finger just to slide across Erickson's foot, causing him to trip. And Boswell just did amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. The 3 kicks you were referring to were all from 49 yards. I don't remember the last time I saw a kicker hit 3 field goals from the same distance. So that was definitely unique. But this game didn't start well for the Steelers. The Steelers definitely got 24 points in an unusual manner, to say the least. But in the first half, the Steelers were clearly not in sync on either side of the ball. The offense only managed 6 points on the board. And the defense, well, it looked like they were going to start out pretty well. Things turned on the 3rd play of the game from scrimmage, and the Bengals were able to move the ball pretty much at will. They didn't put up huge numbers, but they had the ball for the majority of the half, and things were just not going the Steelers' way. What went wrong for Pittsburgh, Austin?
Well, firstly, I didn't write it down, but it came back to me. There was a lot of missed penalties on the Bengals. There was 2 face masks that would have been key. I'm pretty sure both of them were on 3rd down, because one was a touchdown pass to Antonio Brown, which he dropped, and then the other was to Sammy Coates in the back of the end zone, and both of them were face masks. Neither of them were called. Also, not that it mattered because it was a Lawrence Simmons interception, but they also didn't call Bodine for being down the field illegally. But let's recap the first half a little bit. Penalties also on our side really messed us up. The first drive of the game for the Bengals looked like it was going to be a 3-and-out. But a face mask penalty propelled them forward, and that was all the momentum they needed, getting all the way down the field and getting a field goal. From there, the Bengals' running game seemed unstoppable as they scored a 1-yard touchdown run by Andy Dalton and a 4-yard touchdown by Jeremy Hill. On that play, he disrespected the terrible towel, and that changed everything going into the second half.
Absolutely. The Steelers were really, it was like watching a different team in the second half. You mentioned those missed calls and how the calls that went against the Steelers really changed the way those drives were going. Specifically, the first drive, Stephon Tuitt's face mask. Not only did he get injured on that play and left the game, but that gave them a first down, which they ended up, I think, kicking a field goal on. I think that was their first drive. Yeah, it was the first drive of the game. And then the pass interference on Burns set up Andy Dalton scoring that 1-yard quarterback sneak on 4th down. The Steelers' defense almost came through with the goal line stand. Lawrence Timmons making several great plays, including a really hard hit on Jeremy Hill that I remembered hearing through my computer screen listening to that, and it sounded like quite a hit. But things really didn't change until you mentioned the aforementioned terrible towel. I don't know if that really made a huge difference with the players themselves, but I know they were talking about it after the game, so you definitely have to think that it at least had a motivational factor. The Steelers' running game really didn't do anything schematically different, even though Stephon Tuitt missed the rest of the game. They just played better, to be completely honest with you. The difference in the first half between the first and second half was that I was noticing a lot of defensive linemen were at different levels, and by that I mean say Ricardo Matthews may have stymied his man at the line of scrimmage, but then Daniel McCullers would have been 5 yards down the line of scrimmage. that's key for a running game. If you have, obviously, it's better to be pushing your players as an offensive lineman forward, but if they're getting, if they're at different levels, that opens up running lanes for running backs. And Jeremy Hill was definitely doing a lot of that in the first half. Second half, not so much. -1 rushing yards in the second half for Jeremy Hill. There was simply nowhere to run. And the defense, the linebackers and defensive backs were definitely flying in the second half. It was great to see. And so the game and offense for the Bengals was tasked and put in the hands of Andy Dalton. And he really didn't deliver the way he was delivering in the first half. Oftentimes he was looking to Brandon LaFell, and he wasn't looking Tyler Eifert's way much. I think he only made 2 catches on the game. Let me check this out.
It was 1 catch for 9.
Yep, on 3 targets. So really the only person with more than 2 receptions was Brandon LaFell, who kind of disappeared in the second half. I don't know if I think the biggest reason the Bengals stopped producing was A, the running game, B, the fact that the time of possession completely swung where it was full Bengals in the first half. It was all Steelers in the second half. The Steelers weren't scoring touchdowns in the second half until the very end, but it was clear that things were different as Le'Veon Bell may have had the quietest 93 yards on the ground I've ever seen, but he definitely wasn't getting the type of room that he was getting last week, but he was still producing at a level that we were hoping for. Still over 100 scrimmage yards for the game. And what was it? The key play was the Steelers finally broke through on a touchdown pass down the middle to Eli Rogers. That was definitely... I'm sorry. You know what? Let me back up a little bit. The game definitely changed on the Lawrence Timmons interception. You already mentioned Russell Bodine not being called for that illegal man downfield. I don't really know what he was doing on that play. I think he must have thought it was a different play or something, but Andy Dalton rushed a little bit, and actually I think Bodine pushed Timmons right into the path of the pass and just ended up taking it and running it back. And at that point, you could really tell the momentum of the game had swung at that point. And I don't remember if the Steelers scored a touchdown on that drive. Did they, Austin? Do you remember?
It was a field goal.
But I think that was the one that put them within 1 score, though.
Yes.
That's right, because then the following drive in the fourth quarter, that was when Roethlisberger found Rodgers. You know, that's another thing I'd like to point out. Ben Roethlisberger was kind of, I don't want to say poor in the first half, considering how badly he played last week, but it felt like he was misfiring on a lot of his throws, missing high, but in the second half he was a lot better, and that throw to Rodgers it looked a lot like, as soon as I saw it, I thought it was Antonio Brown who caught it, not Eli Rogers, but that was definitely a great play by Rodgers. And the Steelers finally went ahead, and they stayed ahead for good. Andy Dalton and the Bengals just couldn't get anything going. They punted and gave it back to the Steelers with about 6 minutes left, and the Steelers went the rest of the game with the ball, just playing Steelers football, running the ball and getting some key conversions, including a big one from Ladarius Green on a 3rd and long that essentially iced the game. Ladarius Green was unfortunately hit hard and injured on the play, so we're going to have to look at his status for the week later. But overall, a brief little recap. It was not the prettiest game the Steelers have played, certainly not even in this 5-game winning streak. But I think this win proves just how far the team has come. I talked about it earlier in my post-game reaction show. I was really impressed with the way they changed their play in the second half. Yeah, I talked a lot about how similar games earlier in the season, like the earlier Baltimore game, like the Eagles game, where things weren't going well and they never got a chance to turn it around until it was over. And here they finally showed that they can turn it around when when there's still time. So it was definitely a big time win. Going back to the injury report, Stephon Tuitt and Ladarius Green were the 2 main players that we were concerned about. Stephon Tuitt is questionable with the knee injury. I think is it an MCL sprain? I didn't see for sure. He has a... Go ahead.
It's a sprain of some sort. I can't remember what part.
His loss would definitely be huge for this upcoming game. Which injury do you think would be a bigger loss, the injury to Tuitt or Green?
This is a hard one, but I'm actually going to go with Ladarius Green. The because if I remember correctly, Ladarius Green wasn't playing yet in the Ravens game, at least not much.
No, he was not.
So, yeah, I think he's an X factor here against the Ravens next week. So I'm going to pick him because Tua was playing that game and he still got a little pooped on. I just got to go with Ladarius Green.
I'll second that simply because, yes, the Bengals and Ravens are two different teams, but the Steelers just played some good rush defense without Stephon Tuitt. So that proves to me that they can play good rush defense at times, even without Tuitt. But in either case, the Steelers would like to have both of them. And as far as Green's status, he has a concussion history back when he was with the Chargers. Your guess is as good as mine as to whether or not he's going to play. I really don't know whether or not he's going to be able to play. So back to a question that's been weighing on my mind for a little bit. When I ask you whether or not who won did the Steelers win this game or did the Bengals lose it? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say the Steelers won it only because all the calls that the Bengals didn't get didn't help us. Because, if the refs called all the calls that happened that they didn't call, I would say the Bengals lost it. But the Steelers really fought back from 20-6 after the first half. So I'm going to give it to the Steelers. What do you think?
This is tough. I want to give the Steelers a ton of credit for winning the game based on the way they've played over the past month plus now. But if I'm forced to choose, there's just no denying the fact in my mind that the Bengals are just simply did what they do by bungling themselves out of a win. We've seen it now for the past 5 years and 6 out of the last 7 years in the playoffs. They haven't won a playoff game. And simply put, they don't win or play well when it matters the most. You have to look no further than the last time they played in Paul Brown Stadium back in January where the stakes could not have been higher. A playoff game, a rivalry game, and the Bengals had the game in hand. I remember I was sitting right here where I am right now watching this game, and I remember that go-ahead touchdown to A.J. Green. Then I remember the subsequent Landry Jones interception, and the game was over. My mom, who I'm at her apartment right now, she had gone to lay down to pretty much go to bed because there was no reason to think that the Steelers could come back from that. The odds were astronomical, and yet the Bengals found a way to do it. The Jeremy Hill fumble, and then Roethlisberger coming out with the shoulder injury and all, and he was still able to drive it to around midfield, and then the Bengals imploded. We already know what happened with the Vontaze Burfict hit on Antonio Brown, then the Adam Jones flag on the same play that accounted for 30 yards and penalties, leading to the Chris Boswell go-ahead field goal. That was just a clear example of a team not being composed and losing its cool when it mattered most. Obviously, this was a much lesser version of that kind of a performance, but still, you just look at the penalties that were called. I think there was three penalties on the Bengals in a span of 4 plays, or I think it was 4 out of 6 plays or something like that. And it was just laughable almost. It's like if you're watching as a Bengals fan, you have to be sitting there and thinking, are they really going to do this again? And sure enough, they did. And we already mentioned, you talked about it, the fact that the Bengals could have had several more penalties called on them. It really was, they just didn't play a clean game, and they definitely could have won the game based on the way they were playing in the first half. And I just think that all that, in addition to the fact that they allowed the Steelers to score a touchdown, their only touchdown in the fourth quarter, just shows that the Bengals are not a good team when it comes to the clutch, and they have the talent, but they've always been a team that just can't get it done when it matters. Moving on, I wanted to ask you a couple things. One, what do you think of seeing Sammy Coates back in the lineup? I know I didn't write this down, but I remember you talking about the penalty. It made me realize he caught a pass for the first time since week 5. What was it like seeing him out there?
It was interesting. I didn't think he was coming back out for the year, but he had 2 rushes and I think 1 pass caught. And it was interesting seeing him out there. He also got a 44-yard run on a kickoff, which is the best for the Steelers since 2010 or something ridiculous. So it was nice to see him contribute at least a little bit. What do you think?
It was definitely nice. I've always been I've been in Sammy Coates' corner all season, or at least I've been trying to be in his corner all season. I was glad to see him playing. All the Steelers receivers made an impact. Not named Brown, anyways. Kobe Hamilton had another big third down catch. Eli Rogers had that touchdown, and we finally saw Sammy Coates again. I don't know what this means as far as his continued usage. Obviously, would have liked to see him play a little better, but based on the way he had been playing since week 5, anything was something for him. And that kick return was huge. Based on the way he played and Fitzgerald Toussaint played on kickoff returns alone, leads me to want to have Coates be the lone returner and just have Toussaint be the up back on that play. It was definitely nice to see because Coates showed some elusiveness and power on that kick return, which was also very nice. Something the Steelers haven't had in a long time, which is a good kick returner. Maybe he can be that guy, but going back to the offense, I didn't like the second call for the end around for Coates. I think that was like a loss of 6. I don't really know why that play was called there, but I think Sammy Coates can definitely be a difference maker if he can make those deep catches again, like he did in that Week 2 game against the Bengals when he had 2 for 97 yards. Only had 1 for, I think, 9 or 10 yards, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Also, what did you think about the Steelers going for 2 after they scored that go-ahead touchdown?
I don't know what to think about it because I didn't understand. Going up 26-20 didn't really make sense to me. It would have been the same as going up 25-20. It just seemed like a stupid call. I mean, I guess they were like hoping that the Bengals got a touchdown, they would miss the extra point or something, but I don't really understand it. So, what do you think?
A few weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, I kind of understand it because of the way the Steelers have been playing so well when it comes to converting 2-point conversions over the last couple of years. But after they converted their first 2 this year, the Steelers have gone cold and haven't made another one since. While it's still important to practice this, and I think practicing this so much like they said they have has contributed to the reason the Steelers' defense has been so good in the red zone the past couple of years, I just don't see the upside to continually attempting this type of conversion when you haven't had any success since September, you know? I mean, obviously there may be a point when you have to, but the Steelers have shown that they just can't. For whatever reason, they just can't do it right now. So I'd just stay away from it from now. And your kicker just made six field goals. Maybe you're thinking with the law of averages that he's going to miss eventually. But I mean, still, I would have rather trusted Boswell than gone for the 2-point conversion. Which actually reminds me, I mentioned that Boswell got a PAT, which obviously he didn't because the Steelers went for 2 on that touchdown. Let me just adjust that there. I don't know why I wrote that down. All right. So, come on. There we go. All right. So, moving on now. The Pro Bowlers came out this. Oh, yeah. No, that's it. I apologize. The Pro Bowl rosters were announced yesterday. The Steelers had 5 players in the Pro Bowl this year, and they're all on offense. That being Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Marquise Pouncey, and David DeCastro. Did you think that they were all worthy, and could you rank them in your terms of opinion for worthiness?
David DeCastro is a little bit iffy for me, but he played well. It was just his penalties, so I guess I can't say he's done awful, but he's done decently. He just gets so many penalties that it's really, really hard for me to like him here. But everyone else, I think, is good here. Le'Veon Bell definitely deserves it. Antonio Brown, he had an off year, but his off year is still better than most teams' best years. So, Marquise Pouncey, good for him. I don't see an argument against him. And Ben Roethlisberger belongs there, I believe. What do you think?
Well, if I had to rank them in terms of who was most worthy, I think Le'Veon Bell is definitely the most deserving. We talked ourselves about how he may have been entering the MVP conversation last week, even in a crowded conversation with a bunch of other good players. But Le'Veon Bell has probably been the best player on this team this year. He's definitely deserving. You mentioned Antonio Brown. Yeah, his numbers are a bit down this year. That's probably something to do with the fact that there hasn't been a legit number 2 target most of this season, but he's still played really well. Over 1,000 yards, about to go over 100 receptions on the season again. And he has, I think, 11 touchdowns, which is 2 away from the team record of 13. So he could easily surpass that. Marquise Pouncey's been playing pretty well this year. I always thought he might have been a bit overrated based on his name, at least the last few years, but it's definitely been a big bounce-back season for him after having that season-long ankle injury where I think he had 7 surgeries on it. Definitely a big-time bounce-back season for him. He's still playing really well. Ben Roethlisberger, I think, is deserving, but it's just worth noting the obvious home and road splits that he's been struggling with. I'm glad to see that he made it again. He's definitely a great quarterback, but you still want to see him iron out those problems on the road. David DeCastro, I understand why he made it, because you look at the tape and he's done some really good things this year, but the penalties have been the one thing that have frustrated me. According to a stat from NFL.com, David DeCastro leads the Steelers in drives that are killed by penalties this year with 8. To give you some perspective, Marquise Pouncey led the Steelers last year with just 3 the entire season, and there's still 2 games left. So, when you factor that in, I don't want to say DeCastro's unworthy, but that's definitely something that you have to look at and realize that maybe he didn't have his best season. Looking at players who got snubbed, Austin, are there any players on the defense who you think got snubbed for the Pro Bowl?
I think Shazier. I saw one inside linebacker that was Jadeveon Clowney, and that immediately made me sad. So I think Shazier should have been over there instead of Jadeveon Clowney. But that's really it for me. I understand why Tua didn't make it, because Tua didn't eat up until late. Same with Mitchell. Mitchell was actually really bad at the beginning of the season, missing tackles and such. So he didn't have enough time to recuperate, even though he's been playing really well the past couple of weeks. So, what do you think?
I agree with you on that front, too. I definitely would have thought Shazier would have been the best defensive player for the Steelers to make it. I thought Jadeveon Clowney was an outside linebacker / defensive end. Did he?
Is he? I might have been wrong.
Yeah, he's outside. I think inside was C.J. Mosley. That's the guy from Baltimore. I forgot who else was there. Luke Kuechly was one of them. I can understand why Shazier didn't make it, though, just because he's not necessarily a household name because of the fact that he hasn't been healthy. This is the first time he's really been healthy for most of the season, so it's been nice to see. And I'm thinking maybe next year will be the year he breaks through. But someone else I also wanted to mention was instead of David DeCastro, I would have rather seen Marcus Gilbert getting the Pro Bowl nod, simply because I thought he was deserving last year, and I thought he also played really well this year, too. We kind of don't really mention the fact that Ben Roethlisberger really isn't getting hit as much as he used to early in his career. I mean, we do mention it, but it's just something that was so maddening early on in his career. I guess maybe the midpoint of his career from like 2008 to like 2012 or whatever. He was just getting sacked like 40, 50 times a year, and all of a sudden now he's barely getting touched for the past month or so. It's really been great to see, and I think Marcus Gilbert's probably the best pass protector, at least on the right side of that line. I think he's the best pass protector, and it's really been great to see Marcus Gilbert transform from that maybe a little bit of an overweight kind of guy to a guy who's just a muscular, big, strong guy. He's been a big-time performer for the offensive line, and an offensive line that's played really well this year, even if they've been taking penalties probably more than they should have. Looking forward to next week, Austin. It's the biggest game of the year without a doubt. It's Steelers-Ravens. Division's on the line for a Christmas Day showdown. I will be attending the game with my mother. It's going to be quite a game for us, even if the Steelers don't end up winning. I just wanted to say really quickly that my mom is probably the biggest reason that I'm a Steelers fan today. Just instilling that love for the Pittsburgh Steelers in me. We've never seen a game together in person, so it's going to be really special for us whether or not the Steelers do win. But obviously, we'll be rooting hard for the Steelers to win. A win for the Steelers will clinch the division, putting them back in the playoffs for a third straight year, while Baltimore win will put them in the driver's seat to win the division. The Steelers will still have an outside chance to win that and make the wild card. Do you have one key for this game before we get into the preview on I think Friday? We're going to end up doing the preview show. Do you have one thing that we wanted to talk about quickly for this game?
My one key of the game is going to be if Ladarius Green plays. I think we shouldn't win this season because I think highly of Ladarius Green. So if he's out, it could be a real problem. What do you think is the key?
One thing I thought has been a difference between the last time the Steelers won against the Ravens, which has been a couple years now, the Ravens have won, 4 straight, has been the deep ball. Something the Steelers haven't had has been the deep passing game, and it's really hurt them. You have to look no further than the last time the Steelers did beat the Ravens in the middle of the 2014 season. I think it was Week 9. Ben Roethlisberger threw for 360 yards and 6 touchdowns. There were several deep balls in that game, a couple to Antonio Brown, one to Marcus Wheaton, and Martavis Bryant ended up being the difference in that game. I'm not saying Ben Roethlisberger needs to throw for 6 touchdowns again on Sunday, but maybe if it's a couple deep passes to Sammy Coates or Antonio Brown, or maybe we see Kobe Hamilton come up with a big deep catch, I think that's something that the Steelers used to have back in the days when they were beating the Ravens, something that they haven't had recently. You look back to that loss last year against Ryan Mallett and the Ravens then, or you look back to that game in 2014 in the playoffs, the Steelers didn't really hit on any deep passes then. You really look at any of the losses, they haven't been able to connect deep. So I think that's going to be the key in this game. So really quickly here, next week we're going to talk about the Steelers MVP because they traditionally announce their team MVP the week leading up to their final regular season game. So before we talk about that next week, I wanted to talk about who you thought the Steelers' second half MVP has been.
Oh, it's got to be Le'Veon Bell. Without a doubt. Le'Veon Bell's had several 100-yard games. He's averaging 167, or I think it went down after this game, like 150 scrimmage yards a game. He's really, really carrying this team a lot. Who do you think is the second half MVP?
Just because I figured that would be an easy answer, I also wanted to go something different here. It may surprise some people, but I'm going to go with Stephon Tuitt, at least up to this point. Obviously, this can change based on the way the last 2 games go, but I think this defense really turned around after Cameron Hayward was lost with the season-ending injury. And I think if you look at the genesis and the center of that defensive turnaround, you don't have to look any further than his partner on the other side of the line in Stephon Tuitt. He has simply been the best healthy defensive lineman on this team since Hayward left. Tuitt's play rose to another level starting 5 weeks ago, to a level we've never seen it before. Even last year when he played so well, we didn't see this. This was the kind of season we were expecting from him from the get-go. And his ability to take on double teams, when everyone knows that he's the best defensive lineman that the Steelers have, he's still been able to be a game wrecker, someone who can get after the ball carrier, set the edge, and get after the quarterback. I think it's really been a telling story of how his play has risen, has helped everyone else's play rise. His ability to take on double teams has let guys like Ryan Shazier and Lawrence Timmons look as good as they have, and then obviously that contributes to the youngsters like Davis, Burns, and Mitchell playing in the back end to play the way they have. And I think, well, I don't think that there's no doubt in my mind the Steelers defense would still be struggling to a certain degree if he was still playing the way he was at the start of the season. I think his turnaround has made him the MVP of the team, if not of the team, certainly of the defense. That's what I have to say about that, Austin. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up this Week 15 recap here?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, Austin. Well, I'm sorry you're still feeling under the weather here, and I'm hoping that if you feel a little better, you feel better soon, and hopefully that voice clears up. When do you want to do a preview show for this week? Probably Friday or something? Would Friday be good?
Something like that.
Okay, we'll talk more about that then. If you want to check out the show, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at STS Podcast 1. We're also on SoundCloud and YouTube under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast. If you want to email us with questions or feedback, We're the Stronger Than Steel podcast at gmail.com. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have a fantastic night in Austin. Hope you feel better. Looking forward to talking to you soon, okay?
All right.
All right, take care, everybody.